Friend blocked me on social media. You don't fit my aesthetic. I became an influencer, now she's a nobody. Story 1. My name is Zafira. Weird name, I know, but that's not the point. I'm here to talk about Mallory, the person who went from being my best friend to the reason I turned my entire life around. Mallory and I grew up in Greenwick, Ohio. It's one of those towns that's so small you can't even get lost in it if you try. We met in middle school when we were both the weird kids. I was into fantasy novels and writing poetry that I thought was deep, and Mallory was obsessed with anime and drawing her own comics. We were inseparable. She'd sleep over at my house, and we'd stay up all night laughing, watching movies, and dreaming about getting out of our boring little town. Things started to change in high school. Mallory hit her glow up. She got her braces off, started wearing makeup, and suddenly people noticed her. She didn't look like the same awkward kid who spent hours drawing in her sketchbook. People started inviting her to parties. Guys started flirting with her. Meanwhile, I stayed the same. I still wore baggy clothes, spent my weekends buried in books, and could barely talk to anyone outside of our little bubble. I wasn't jealous, at least, I don't think I was. I just missed how things used to be. Mallory never ditched me completely, but I could feel the shift. She'd tell me about these parties she went to without me. She'd show me pictures of her new friends and laugh about inside jokes I wasn't part of. I started seeing less and less of her. Every time I asked her to hang out, she'd tell me she was busy or already had plans. The breaking point came during our senior year. Mallory had become obsessed with Instagram. Back then, it wasn't as big as it is now, but she got really into it. She had this artsy style that people loved, moody black and white pictures, artsy coffee shots, candid selfies that weren't actually candid. Her follower count started climbing. She was Greenwick's little celebrity. One day, I tried to check her Instagram, but I couldn't find her account. I thought she deleted it, so I texted her. "Hey, did you delete your Insta?" Her response? A few hours later, I got this text. "No, I just unfollowed a bunch of people and blocked some too. Don't take it personally, Z, I'm just curating my aesthetic. You understand, right?" Less than 3. I didn't understand. At all. I called her, but she didn't answer. I sent another text asking what she meant, but she ignored that too. I sat there rereading her message, trying to make sense of it. I didn't fit her aesthetic? What did that even mean? I was her best friend, not some random stranger she met online. She never explained. She just cut me off. Completely. No calls, no texts, no answers. It was like I didn't exist to her anymore. I was devastated. Mallory wasn't just my best friend, she was my only friend. Without her, I had no one. I spent months replaying everything in my head, wondering what I did wrong. The worst part was that I couldn't escape her. Greenwick is small, and her Instagram was everywhere. People were always talking about her latest post or tagging her in pictures at parties I wasn't invited to. It felt like the whole town was on her side. While Mallory was thriving, I was stuck. I stayed in Greenwick after high school to take care of my mom, who got sick around that time. I took a job at the local diner to help pay bills. My days were a blur of greasy burgers, crying babies, and aching feet. Meanwhile, Mallory moved to Chicago and became an even bigger deal. Her Instagram blew up. She started doing brand collabs, going to fancy events, and posting pictures of herself in designer clothes. She wasn't just Mallory from Greenwick anymore, she was Mallory, the influencer. One night, after a particularly brutal double shift at the diner, I came home and opened Instagram out of habit. The first thing I saw was a picture of Mallory sitting on some rooftop, sipping champagne. The caption read, "Hard work pays off. Less than 3 #blessed." I stared at it for a long time. Hard work? What did Mallory know about hard work? She didn't know what it was like to scrub grease off a grill for minimum wage or come home so tired you couldn't even stand. She didn't know what it was like to take care of a sick parent, juggling doctor's appointments and medical bills while trying to keep your head above water. She had no idea. And yet, there she was, acting like she'd earned every bit of her shiny, perfect life. Something inside me snapped. I was done feeling sorry for myself. Mallory had reinvented herself, and I realized I could do the same. I didn't need her. I didn't need anyone. I could build something on my own. I decided to start with Instagram. I didn't know what I was doing at first. My posts were awkward and messy. I barely got any likes. But I didn't give up. I started watching YouTube tutorials, studying successful accounts, and experimenting with different styles. I found my niche in affordable, sustainable living, something I was already passionate about because I had to be. I posted thrift store finds, DIY projects, budget-friendly meal ideas, and tips for making the most out of what you have. Slowly, people started noticing. By the time I hit 10,000 followers, I had a little community. People loved my content. They'd comment on my posts, share their own tips, and tell me how much I inspired them. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose. I wasn't just the awkward girl from Greenwick anymore, I was someone people looked up to. When I hit 50,000 followers, brands started reaching out. At first, it was small stuff, free products in exchange for posts. But eventually, I started getting paid collaborations. Real money, enough to start saving, enough to dream about something better. By the time I hit 500,000 followers, my life had completely changed. I quit the diner, moved to Columbus, and rented a tiny but adorable apartment. I started a YouTube channel where I shared tutorials and vlogged about my daily life. My audience kept growing, and so did the opportunities. I was doing what I loved and getting paid for it. I had built a new life, one that had nothing to do with Mallory or Greenwick. And that's when she reached out. One day, out of the blue, Mallory slid into my DMs. "Hey Z. Long time no talk. I've been following your page, OMG, you're killing it. So proud of you. We should totally collab sometime. Less than 3. I stared at the message, stunned. After years of silence, this was how she decided to come back? Acting like nothing had happened? Acting like we were still friends? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I did what I always do, I thought about it. I went back and reread her old text about not fitting her aesthetic. I thought about how she had ghosted me and left me to pick up the pieces. And then I thought about how far I'd come since then. I wasn't the same Zafira she had walked all over. I had built something real, something that couldn't be taken away with a single less than 3 and a block button. And now, Mallory wanted to ride on my coattails? No way. I decided to wait before replying. I didn't block her right away, I wanted to do this right. In the meantime, I asked around. A mutual friend from Greenwick, someone who still kept in touch with both of us, told me Mallory's influencer career wasn't going so great. Her follower count had stagnated, her engagement was low, and brands weren't reaching out like they used to. Apparently, she'd even been complaining about how the market's too crowded now and how people don't appreciate real art anymore. Hearing that made me smile, not in a cruel way, but because I finally understood what she wanted from me. Mallory didn't want to collab. She wanted help. She thought working with me could revive her career. Well, I had other plans. I replied to her DM a few days later. "Hey Mallory. Wow, it's been so long. Thanks for reaching out. A collab sounds like a cool idea. Let me think about how we could make it work, so much going on right now, you know? I'll get back to you soon." She responded almost immediately. "OMG yay. Take your time, no rush. So excited for this." The thing is, I had no intention of working with her. I just wanted her to sit with that excitement, checking her inbox, wondering what was taking so long. Meanwhile, I got to work on my real plan. A few weeks later, I posted a Q&A video on my YouTube channel. One of the questions I included was, "Have you ever had a falling out with a friend?" It was the perfect opening. I didn't name Mallory directly, of course not, but I told the story. I told my audience about the friend who had blocked me because I didn't fit her aesthetic. I talked about how much it hurt to lose someone I thought would be in my life forever. And then, I told them how I rebuilt my life from the ground up, using the pain as fuel to create something beautiful. It wasn't bitter, it was honest. I wanted people to understand how much I'd grown, not just as an influencer, but as a person. The video blew up. My followers were furious on my behalf. They flooded the comments with messages of support and shared their own stories of toxic friendships. The video got picked up by a few blogs, and my follower count skyrocketed. People started calling me the queen of second chances and the comeback kid. It was one of the most popular videos I'd ever made. Mallory must have seen it, because she sent me another DM. "Hey. I saw your video. I think it was about me? I'm really sorry if I hurt you. I was young and stupid, and I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Can we please talk?" This time, I didn't wait to respond. "Hey Mallory, thanks for your message. I think we've both grown a lot since high school, but I'm not interested in reconnecting. I wish you all the best." Then I blocked her. The fallout was almost immediate. People in Greenwick started talking. Mutual friends began dropping little bits of gossip, about how Mallory had been struggling, about how she'd told people she was so close to landing a big collab with me. Apparently, she'd been hyping up the idea to anyone who would listen, acting like we were still best friends and that our partnership would save her career. But there was no partnership. And now there never would be. These days, I'm thriving. I'm working with brands I love, connecting with people who share my values, and living a life that feels real and fulfilling. Mallory, on the other hand, seems to have faded into the background. Her posts are sporadic, her captions forced, and her engagement non-existent. Every now and then, someone from Greenwick will send me a screenshot of one of her posts with a caption like, "Remember her? It used to bother me. Now, it doesn't." I didn't plan to get revenge, but I won't lie, it feels good to know that I came out on top. Mallory wanted to curate her aesthetic, and in the process, she erased the one person who truly cared about her. That was her choice. She taught me that some people are only in your life for a season, and when their season ends, you let them go. As for me? I'm doing just fine. Story 2. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, a break I'd been dreaming about for years. After 2 years of grinding 60-hour weeks, I finally booked a vacation to Bora Bora. A private beach bungalow, endless ocean views, and no emails. For once, I could just breathe. I had no idea that back home, my sister was planning to ruin my life. Let me rewind a bit. My name's Mateo, and I live in a brownstone in Brooklyn. Well, I live there. That house has been in my family for decades. My parents, Maria and Felipe, worked themselves to the bone to buy it when the neighborhood was still up and coming. I grew up there, every inch of it filled with memories. When my parents passed, they left it to me and my sister, Talene. Talene's older than me by 6 years and works as a real estate agent in New Jersey. I bought out her share of the house a few years ago. She wanted the money to upgrade her condo, and I wanted to keep the family home. It wasn't easy. I took on extra work, scrimped, and saved to make it happen, but I did it. That house was mine. At least, I thought it was. On the third day of my trip, I got a call from my best friend, Horace. I could tell right away something was off. Horace doesn't call unless it's important. "Mateo, are you sitting down?" he asked. "No," I said, trying to laugh it off. "What's up?" "It's your house, man. There's a sold sign out front." My brain froze. "What? That's not possible." "I swear to you, it's there. I thought you'd sold it without telling me, but then I remembered you'd never do that." "I didn't sell my house." My voice cracked as I said it. "Horace, are you sure?" "I'm staring at it right now. Dude, something's not right. You need to come back." I didn't wait to hear more. I packed my bags, left paradise behind, and got on the next flight home. When I pulled up to my house the next day, there it was, a massive red and white sold sign planted right in the front yard. My stomach dropped. This couldn't be happening. My keys didn't work, so I rang the doorbell like a madman. After what felt like forever, a middle-aged guy answered the door. He looked confused and annoyed. "Can I help you?" he asked. "This is my house," I said, my voice shaking. "Why are you here?" His brow furrowed. "I bought this house last week." "Who are you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I didn't sell my house. There's been a mistake." He shook his head. "I bought it from your real estate agent. It's all legit. Look, I don't want any trouble, but maybe you should talk to her." Her? The realization hit me like a freight train. Talene. She was the only person who had access to anything related to my house. My hands were trembling as I got back into my car and drove straight to her office in Hoboken. Talene greeted me with a big, fake smile, acting like nothing was wrong. "Mateo. You're back early. How was Bora Bora?" I didn't even sit down. "What did you do?" I demanded. She tilted her head like she didn't understand. "What are you talking about?" "My house, Talene. Why is there a sold sign in front of it? Why can't I get inside?" Her expression didn't change. If anything, she looked bored. "Oh, that. Look, it's not personal. It was just business." My jaw dropped. "What the hell does that mean? You sold my house without telling me?" She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "I did it for you. You've been so stressed, always working, never taking care of yourself. That house was a burden. I figured you'd be better off." "A burden?" I was practically yelling. "That's my home, Talene. How could you do this?" She shrugged, like it was no big deal. "You gave me power of attorney last year, remember? When you were too busy to handle the roof repairs. I used it to sell the house. Legally, it's all above board." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You planned this," I said, my voice trembling. "You planned this the whole time." Her face hardened. "You should be thanking me. I got you a great price, almost $2 million. That's way more than it's worth." "Where's the money, then? If you got me a great price, where is it?" Her smirk was the final straw. "I've already reinvested it. Trust me, you'll see the benefits eventually." I left her office in a haze of disbelief and rage. I had no house, no money, and no idea what to do next. The next few weeks were a blur of panic and desperation. I stayed on Horace's couch while I hired a lawyer and tried to figure out what the hell had happened. Talene had sold the house for just under $2 million. She took a hefty commission as the agent and pocketed the rest, claiming it was all done on my behalf. The buyers, meanwhile, were furious when they found out I hadn't authorized the sale. I wanted to fix this quietly, but Talene made that impossible. When I confronted her again, she doubled down, saying she'd done me a favor and accusing me of being ungrateful. "You're acting like a child," she sneered. "Grow up, Mateo. This is how the world works." That's when I decided I wasn't just going to get my house back. I was going to make her pay for what she did. The lawsuit was brutal. My lawyer, Drusilla, didn't sugarcoat anything. "This is fraud, plain and simple," she said. "But she's going to fight us tooth and nail. Are you ready for that?" I nodded. "I don't care how long it takes. She's not getting away with this." And fight she did. Talene hired a high-powered attorney and tried to paint me as a reckless, irresponsible brother who didn't appreciate her help. She claimed the house had been a financial burden on me, that I was too busy with work to handle it, and that selling it had been in my best interest. She even cried on the stand, saying she'd only wanted to protect me. But we had the evidence. Emails, text messages, and witness testimonies painted a very different picture. Talene had been planning this for months. She'd forged documents, lied to the buyers, and manipulated me into signing over power of attorney, knowing exactly what she was going to do with it. Every time I saw her in court, she looked colder and more detached. This wasn't just about money to her, it was about control. She wanted to prove that she could take whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, and there was nothing I could do about it. Even after the lawsuit began, Talene didn't stop trying to twist the knife. She started spreading rumors about me, telling our extended family that I was greedy and ungrateful. She even tried to contact my lawyer, offering to settle if I dropped the case and let her keep the money. I didn't bite. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the principle. She'd betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. I'm still in the middle of this battle. The case is dragging on longer than I expected, and the emotional toll is heavier than I could have imagined. But I won't stop. I'll do whatever it takes to get justice, not just for me, but for anyone she's ever screwed over. I don't know how this will end, but one thing's for sure, Talene messed with the wrong person. The court battle stretched on for months. Talene threw everything she had at me, legal tricks, fake tears, and her usual manipulative nonsense. But as the trial dragged on, her lies started to unravel. My lawyer, Drusilla, was relentless. Every email, every forged document, and every shady deal she'd made was laid bare for the court to see. It turned out this wasn't the first time Talene had bent the rules in her real estate career. She'd gotten away with small infractions before, but this time she'd gone too far. As more evidence piled up, Talene started to crack. The smug confidence she'd walked into court with began to fade. By the time her own lawyer turned on her, suggesting she should settle to save herself further humiliation, she looked like a shadow of the person she'd once been. But I wasn't interested in a settlement. I didn't just want my house back, I wanted to make sure Talene could never pull something like this again. Finally, the day of the verdict arrived. I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding as the judge read the decision. Based on the evidence presented, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mateo. The defendant, Talene, is found guilty of fraud and is ordered to pay restitution in the full amount of the sale, plus damages for emotional distress and legal fees. Furthermore, the defendant's actions will be reported to the State Real Estate Board for further disciplinary action. The relief that washed over me was indescribable. I'd won. The house was mine again, and Talene was on the hook for every cent she'd stolen. But I wasn't done yet. The fallout hit her fast and hard. The Real Estate Board launched their own investigation, and it didn't take long for them to revoke her license permanently. Talene was officially banned from working in real estate for life. She lost her job, her reputation, and most of her professional connections. As for the money, she didn't have it. She'd spent a chunk of it on some investment opportunities that turned out to be worthless, and the rest had gone toward her flashy lifestyle, luxury bags, designer clothes, and vacations she couldn't afford. When the court froze her assets, she was left scrambling. She had to sell her condo to pay me back, and even then, she was still deep in debt. That wasn't enough for me. Talene had made this personal, and I wanted everyone to know what she'd done. With Drusilla's help, I leaked the story to the press. A local news outlet picked it up first, then bigger publications followed. Headlines like "Real Estate Agent Sells Brother's Home Without Consent" and "Fraud Case Shatters Career of Top Realtor" started popping up everywhere. Her name was dragged through the mud, and she became a cautionary tale in the industry. She tried to play the victim, of course. She went on social media, posting long rants about how I was ruining her life and that I'd overreacted. But the public wasn't buying it. People flooded her posts with comments calling her out, and her attempts to rebuild her reputation failed miserably. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding my life. I couldn't stay in the house after everything that had happened, it didn't feel like home anymore. I sold it, this time on my own terms, and used the money to move to Vermont. I bought a cozy cabin in a quiet town, surrounded by nature. It was the fresh start I desperately needed. But I didn't forget what Talene had done. I made it clear to our family and anyone who asked that I wouldn't forgive her. She reached out a few times, begging for sympathy, but I blocked her number and refused to respond. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Last I heard, Talene was working as a receptionist at a small office in New Jersey, barely making ends meet. She'd lost everything, her career, her status, and the respect of everyone who knew her. And honestly, I don't feel bad for her. She betrayed me in the worst way possible, and she deserved every ounce of karma that came her way. Revenge doesn't always fix everything, but in this case, it felt pretty damn good.